Alright, welcome back to the game, guys. Typing like monkeys on the load screen, but we are here and ready to rock and roll. This is, of course, a qualifying match in Copa America. In fact, this is the fastest I think we've ever gotten to a qualifying match, but we are here for the qualifier. Now, I had misread the brackets. I thought both of these guys could have easily walked through, but sadly, they meet one round prior, so only one of these two fantastic North American players will have a chance to get into Copa America Season 2. Spawning the bottom left corner of the map, though, to start this off. He doesn't need a team. He's got his own sponsor coming from Asus. Let's give you the blue Protoss player, desRow.
In upper right as the red Zerg. It is IVD's Phog.
I like his name. I don't know. It's just something. There's something like nice about it. Just like Phog. Phog.
Really?
I
I'm
don't
looking
know.
the opposite for it.
It's got a good mouthfeel to it. I don't know.
Sure. IVD's actually been having a run of really good luck lately. What was it? The WCS American qualifiers, two of their guys got through, including a guy who's only 15. What the heck?
Yeah, Arium is quite the little tyke.
I don't think he's that young. You can't say little tyke.
No, I'm gonna say little tyke because he's one of those guys that's like, even as he grows up, he's still got like that baby face on him. Phog's kind of actually somewhat guilty. I think, okay, honestly, guys, this is gonna get weird for a second. I think Phog's kind of a handsome dude, but he's got this really young face.
And weirdness is over. All right then, Cannon Rush. Cannon Rush is on the way.
Yeah.
Which Phog actually saw. He saw the probe going, and he was like, you know what? I want to check to make sure that the prawns are going down, and good thing too. It is.
Yeah, this is actually not a bad way to start this off for desRow. What I really like what Phog was doing, though, the guys, like the drones look like they were having a party and dancing like crazy. The idea is you patrol a couple of them around, so desRow doesn't get the surface area to do what he's doing right now, and it's a beautifully throw down 3 more cannons. Well, 3 cannons in total and another pylon. Second probe comes across the map because he was worried about losing the first. And for Phog, well, he could still cancel the hatchery and just take a third. I say it like it's easier than it is, but desRow's going to have to cancel a lot if he wants to make this worthwhile for his investment, because as we see, it's 300 minerals for hatchery. No, he cancels it, so it's not even that bad, but immediately cancels the other cannons. So both players trying to minimize losses. But I think Phog should have just taken that third much earlier. In fact, he's going to double expand? What? This is really ballsy.
I've seen people do it before. We also, it's so weird, it's the exact same map, the exact same positions. We also saw someone try and, will actually succeed at 2-base baneling busting his cannon rushing
That was
opponents.
Phog versus Huck.
Was it?
Yes!
Was it?
I believe it was.
Do it again. That worked.
That's just what I'm thinking. This could be that perfect case scenario. Now, this one to the third gets canceled because he was worried about it, or it actually never gets made, I should say.
desRow doesn't think that he expanded towards the bottom one, the lowest main.
You know, I remember when this map first came out, you and I always had a lot of discussion about like where the thirds would be, and this was the one that we kind of thought like, okay, might be better later on, but we never really saw anyone make use of this. And it makes sense that desRow wouldn't scout this because nobody ever takes that base.
Well, that was in regards to Terran. I had no idea about Zerg.
Well, I mean, kind of generally, though, the same sentiment where it's like, you just don't assume that this base is going to be taken most races. But desRow's sneaking around here to make sure he will stumble upon this.
It's also where you put your proxy pylons, really.
Yeah.
Just for future use, so inevitable kind of that he would scout here. It was not going to be the Baneling Island, obviously, though. That third was, in fact, taken. I mean, you can get speed, and you can wait to take your third as your natural, because there's only one cannon. I mean, it's not that many lings that indicate to it, but I'm just choosing to leave that as a fourth.
Well, actually, because of the way the cannon and the pylon are positioned, a queen could have cleaned this up already without taking damage from the cannon.
Oh, that's very true as well. I mean, it would have taken more time, but, I mean, it's safer. It's always a safer option.
I mean, the really scary thing is desRow's not exactly chronoing at the warp gate, but like we just saw how deadly a 4-gate could be to somebody as a pylon in your base when Angelus goes fighting off Ghost Too Dark. Same exact scenario, but the pylon's not exactly in his main, still at the natural.
Yeah, we've seen people use cannon rushes to then go into, for example, Dark Shrine. You know, very fast TTs. That has been effective.
David Kim.
We actually, we actually have Phog going for a kind of an early Roach Warren. Now, he hasn't actually gotten a good scout inside the main. This is his only overload that he has, and it's not going to be able to get in there, as we can see. So it's probably just precautionary. But as we know, like a warp gate attack is still a ways off. He could have definitely been droning that entire time, waiting until the very last second to actually get the Roach Warren.
Yeah, the Roach Warren's got a very, very responsible role. Weird is this phrase like that in the early game, and you know, it'll clip pylon, but it's really good Sorry, lungs again. And trying to deal with that early aggression. I mean, we've seen how ineffective Lings can be all day, all week, you know, through various qualifiers. PvZ, Lings just don't, until they've got upgrades on them. These are not very efficient units.
desRow adding on just 2 more gateways, some +1 weapons, not choosing a tech yet.
You know, actually, we didn't really talk about this for desRow, but what's kind of interesting for desRow is this guy is very. I would almost equate him to be like the Protoss version of Major, in the terms of the way he plays his standard style. You know, he likes to play the same way most of the time, and he really adapts a lot of his strategies from the Koreans. And he said it himself too. Like I've asked him in the past, you know, like who do you identify most with, and you know, he'll tell you like parting, rain, stuff like that. So I mean. Right now, we can sit here and guess and talk about DTs and stuff like we have been, but the reality is, it's probably rarely going to be the case with desRow.
Well, he does throw on a Twilight Council, and while it's not out of the question, it's, I think, unlikely to get a Dark Shrine right now. It would be oddly timed, and that would be the only benefit of getting it. That would be oddly timed. I think he's going to get Blink, and there it goes. Blink's become just really this really great tool that you can get in all types of positions.
Well, I think one of the dangerous things with Blink, we've seen, like if you go mass stalkers with level 3 upgrades and Blink, you're gonna have a good time until they're on Hive Tech.
Let's see if he actually decides to stay with Blink though. There are certainly 3 base there are certainly 3 base all-ins, which, you know, people always they're always like combating the definition of an all-in, but truly, if you don't have a backup plan, if you lose your army, then...
Well, I think the other option, too, is he's always going to be on the back of his mind as a Protest player. You know, maybe it's Mutas. You know, there's always that quick tech swap. And without Blink and without Archons, you're never going to deal with that, period. So, I mean, the thing about Blink, and I've said this in PvP, it kind of relates here. This is kind of a nice catch-all. You know, it's not definitively amazing, but it will work well against generically everything.
That's what I'm trying to explain, right? It's like...
Well, good thing I explained it.
I'm not gonna call you out for repeating what I said a minute earlier when I was like, a Blink is really good in all situations.
No, I was just trying to build on the same point though. In all honesty,
I know.
The sad thing is though, Blink stalkers, guys, they do work versus Hydras, but only if you have enough of them. It's not like blinking forward gives you an advantage against them, but blinking backwards, keeping them back one at a time. The retention blink gives you is insane. And while Phog is getting a composition that's going to be actually fantastic because he is investing in melee upgrades, which means he's looking towards that Hive Tech. Maybe not fast, but that's on his mind. Ultras, Lings, what have you in the late game. Absolutely so good versus Stalkers.
Yeah, that's true. Like I said, it could have been an all-in. It's obviously not now, as he does invest into his Robo. You know, getting a Warp Prism, getting Robotics Bay, definitely going up to Colossus. But it is that good catch-all, and it can lead to a lot of things, including dealing, you know, combating with Aspire very easily. But desRow has been consistent with these hallucinated Phoenix scouting.
You know why the blink icon's a circle? Because it's like a Pokeball, and you gotta catch all.
That was a really big stretch.
Stretch Armstrong, big stretch. Alright, well, Phog, my horrible sense of humor aside, does have a sizable army. desRow could push in here. The Sentry count's really not that wild. And that's what's kind of concerning about this. Because normally as a Protest player, when you're pushing, you know, you've got those infinite segments, you know, force fielding off, a tenth of the Hydras, slicing them up and killing them a little bit at a time. But he's not looking to actually push. He's just cleaning up creep, trying to get some map control back. Yeah. And on 3 bases, he's sitting comfy. But of course, as that level 3 weapon upgrades comes out and as Colossus trying to fight, perhaps can either look towards taking a 4th or go full in with an attack. And looks like with the Zealots warping in, he might just try and split the attention of Phog here.
Well, I think he's more preparing. He's been, as I said, always scouting with these hallucinated Phoenixes. I think he's preparing for an attack. He saw that it was
the Colossus.
Hydra.
Oh no!
Oh, he should survive. Yeah. Okay, there we go. Yeah, he saw it was Roach Hydra, which, you know, they'll have at least one attack before they try and go up to Vipers. So I think desRow is definitely preparing for that. And then depending on how that attack will work, the counterattack is always better. You know, because you generally don't want to be the person who attacks. You want to be the person who defends and defends well and then counterattacks.
Well, sometimes the attack works really well if you get your out of position. But you're right, like. Zerg players especially, that defender's advantage means a lot more. The nice thing about Warp Gate and Warp Tech, you know, kind of strips away that defender's advantage because you can match them. You know, just instantly warp in 12 Stalkers, whereas they instantly make 12 Hydras from Larva type thing. But I mean, that's because this army is so gateway heavy. It might be a factor. Most of the time, it's not though, because it's usually the Colossus. It's usually the slower, higher tech units that really decide the game.
Yeah. You know, he really hasn't gotten that many Colossus.
Yeah.
Oh, there was the second one popping out. It seemed like there was a bigger gap than I'm used to.
He's putting more priority into this, and I like this because so many times, whether it's Corruptors, whether it's Vipers, Colossus are, I don't know, bait most of the time.
I don't like being caught out here, though. I mean, Mothership Core, these Force Fields have got to save him.
Yeah. He's going to try and take that fourth like predicted before. So really trying to extend his advantage. However, the Warp Prism in the main manages to get a couple Zealots off before going down. But Hydras are... Yeah. Hydras are pretty good.
Yeah. It's quite actually surprising that desRow did not try and do something that would take advantage of the fact that Phog had to take a, a jutting out third. But it has gone to a normal game, so that is now looking like a kind of normal fourth. And Phog is in a pretty good position. I mean, he has everything. He has all the tools that are needed to actually break this composition from desRow. All he has to do is find a really good position. On Overgrowth, that position is exactly where he's setting up, over this little ledge for the Corruptors.
Yeah. Hydras are going to come into effect here to knock down one of the gateways so quickly, but now that there's actual Colossus in play, I mean, one goes down to the Corruptors, but it's taking out a lot of Hydras before it dies, and that's kind of its only role. Kill a lot of Hydras before dying. desRow not really making use of Blink, though. Not sure I like this choice. He's just kind of brute forcing it. We're not seeing any Blink Micro whatsoever, honestly.
The Corruptors went down too fast. There was just not quite enough to really be able to suicide them past the Blink Stalkers. And the fact that he was just, that was like a 98% composition of Hydralisk. There's usually a reason you see roaches, or at the very least Lings with them.
Yeah,
like,
the buffer.
They take so many, they're glass cannons again. So looking forward might have been a little bold, but he will continue to counterattack.
I'm not in love with the choice to go Corruptors versus this either. I think a majority of the time Hive Tech, you know, with Vipers is always going to be more efficient.
Corruptors is like the older style. It's a little more brute force, I suppose, but...
No, both players going to go brute force, because once again, desRow not exactly displaying the greatest show of Blink Stalker Micro, but now starting to get it underway here. Blinking these backwards. I don't know if he's got the numbers to really take this fight, though. He's getting really aggressive on the side of the field. There's no Guardian Shield. There's no nothing. Yeah, he's going to Blink to disengage.
I may be expecting, hoping rather that the Corruptors actually weren't out, but just 4 Corruptors was enough as the Blink Stalkers. He wasn't in that great position where he could make them focus entirely on the Corruptors. So does have to pull back, but he retains a lot of the gateway count. That's the great thing about going for Stalkers with Blink. Like, even if you lose the fight, which generally leads to a Protoss GG, you can get away with a good chunk of Stalkers.
Well, I like that we finally have the Hive Tech on the way. I feel it's like a little bit late because there are going to be a lot of Templar behind this for round 2. Combination Archons, feedbacks, as well as Storms are going to be ready for desRow. Phog actually hitting right now might be that sweet spot of a timing, though. desRow really hasn't really built his army. He's only got a couple Colossus available. He's devoted so much of his gas to tech, and this 4th base is in a lot of trouble. Oh, Zombie Grub, this 4th base is in a lot of trouble.
It might go down, but that's not... it's actually not the worst thing in the world for desRow. It's still 4 bases versus 3. His army is still okay. But this counterattack at the 3rd is also going to really help, hopefully doing some return economic damage to Phog.
Yeah, we see a couple workers bleeding out here, but really nothing too insane. We had a Zealot run by over here to the 3rd while this was going on. They do get a couple good kills, but I think for the big thing too, look at the upgrades right now. I mean, desRow's on those level 3 weapon upgrades. There's not really any armor behind this. He's invested in the plasma shields, and that's my assumption because he's looking towards the Archons later, but I mean, the massive Blink Stalker +3. This works only for some time. Blinding Clouds are eventually going to come down. They'll zone out a good chunk of the army. Yeah, the Storm's going to be good. Actually, those Hydras are hungry. They eat the whole Storm. I think desRow's got this defensive fight. Yeah. He's going to blink forward.
If he had disengaged, ran out of the Storms without taking much, then that's a big problem. As of course, Storms are they're not endless, right? Like a Colossus shot, but he does take a huge chunk of his army gone. And desRow, again, counterattacking, but Phog,
17 Hydras. Scary remix, but you're right. I don't know if this will be enough. They'll be coming in, of course, 1 or 2 at a time, spawning here at the 3rd. One of the things, too... Oh, he just snipes the base and gets away. Nice move out of desRow. One of the things, too, guys, going back to this whole point of Vipers, Stalkers can blink away out of the Blinding Clouds very quickly, but Stalkers' range is fairly limited. If you get those Blinding Clouds down, Hydras kind of have that same effect. I mean, you see Force Fields zone out a Zerg player, Blinding Clouds will do the same thing to a Protoss. desRow has to blink back out of it, but there's no way he's walking back into it. So, again, these Corruptors were kind of good to help get rid of the Colossus count, but they've been useless for so long.
Yeah, I mean, like desRow's only making like one Colossus, and then he's good. He's like fine. It's almost like he's making him build Corruptors, and he doesn't really care about the Colossus. But
Yeah.
while desRow has been advancing in tech, Phog has not. You know, Roach Hydra Corruptor is very lair. It's not good. It's definitely a reason that it fell out of
So
style.
rare.
It's yeah, exactly. It's so rare. But like
Oh, the
Infestors,
Corruptors.
Swarm Hosts, Vipers, something a little more.
Yeah, Corruptors barely don't get that last hit off. These storms have been driving it back over and over and over again. I think Phog's starting to finally feel the burn here. I mean, he still hasn't really made up for that base that went down. The Hydralisk count has been dwindling due to the
No.
Blink Stalkers really getting on top of this. And I gotta be honest, at this point, it's too early to call, but I'm thinking this is desRow's game to lose.
Well, I don't think it's too early. 175 supply to just 130, and it's majorly Hydralisk, which again, like, there's a reason you don't usually see just Hydralisk, but
Yeah.
we didn't. I just assumed, I don't know why, that 2-2 that Phog had was to the units he was making, but it's actually melee upgrades. He doesn't have any missile attack.
Well, that's what I had alluded to earlier. Like, I really thought the Eye of Phog here was going to focus on that late game. That, you know, when you go for those melee upgrades, you're thinking of Adrenal Glands, you're thinking of Ultralisks, you're thinking of Broodlords, not sticking on Roach Hydra as long as you did.
Yeah, I mean, even if they get upgrades for the melee, sometimes they sneak in like the missile attack as well. And you know, I guess because I thought I saw it actually making earlier on in this game, but I guess not. So this Hydralisk, I mean, just Hydralisk Ling without any upgrades. I don't know.
Yeah, it's making a little more sense why these army fights are going so one-sidedly, but still, desRow the only advantage he has. Well, actually, I take this back. He's going for those level 2 plasma shields, so this will work out kind of nicely. But I think for Phog, I mean, you know, he's eating a lot of the storms. He doesn't have his own sort of, I guess, caster-type units. You know, there's no Vipers in play. There's no fungal growths going out. This has been a real, just brute force experience for him. Again, going with the Corruptors. You know, desRow hasn't really shown that there's been many Colossus coming out behind this. It's slowly been 1 to 2, like once every 10 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, storms are just doing a good enough job, and we have talked about it, like in the certain circumstances, such as the 3-base Blink Stalker all-in, which you alluded to earlier. If it is against nothing but Hydralisk, it can surprisingly still do very well because they, you know, Blink retains a lot of the Blink Stalkers, and just Hydralisk die very quickly. So the fact that he's doing it, and it's not just Blink Stalkers, but Storms and a couple of Colossus mixed in as well, it's almost like. It's almost obvious that this works. And I don't want to say that Phog has ever won a game like doing this. Obviously, he has, or he would.
Yo, Phog knocked out Huck last season in Copa America. I mean, that's kind of.
That's right, he did.
That's kind of the bottom line here. He's not a terrible Zerg player.
Oh, I remember that. But the thing was that, like, I don't want to be too critical.
It's kind of Huck playing bad more than Phog.
Yeah, it was like
amazing.
Phog did have like a kind of like a one style that he did. I think he doesn't like playing Swarm Hosts, as we have talked. Some people just don't.
Phog was also the guy who gave major trouble with the Roach Hydra. You remember that too? Like it was
right. Like he doesn't have the Roach Hydra. That's right. Surprisingly, no Roaches in this one though.
Well, the Lings need to get in here. There's actually not a lot of AoE here in the front lines, but as we see, Storms combined with an Archon Blast combined with a quickly wipe out a chunk of Lings. These units might be cheap, they might be fast, but I don't know if they're going to be good enough here. Because the thing is, like, look at the bank. Phog's got a 2,000 gas bank, but like a 200 mineral bank. Like, that's not going to cut it for a Remax. Hydra's now forced to fight, and as you point out, without those upgrades. Corruptors are looking for something to fight here in the back. Looks like they will find that Colossus, but Storm's going down, and, well, he's got a good concave. Is this going to be enough?
That was a very, very awkward fight by desRow. Like, very awkward.
Both sides. Just bleeding out pretty equally, one at a time here.
Well, I think it actually was the best thing possible for Phog, because desRow's Storms were on the left side, and his Colossus weren't fighting, and his Blink Stalkers were in the front. Like, it was just a whole lot of mess, but even then, it's still desRow's.
He takes the upper hand, yeah. And he can remax, Phog can't. I mean, that mineral bank is really something to consider, guys. You know, there's no mining in the main. It looks like Phog's on 3 bases, but really it's 2. desRow's resecured the 4th, and he took a 5th at that gold. This guy's going to have warp-ins for days. If I just get to that point where he might as well just warp in like a max amount of either Stalkers or Zealots because he can afford to make more afterwards.
Phog just really didn't, I want to say he doesn't really have a late game, or he didn't really have a late game. This attack, like these Roach Hydra, or Hydra Ling, Roach Hydra Corruptor, attacks like those they're lair-based, and they're supposed to like have 1 to, I'd say, 3 good punches before they try and transition into something else, right? And he's been on it for the last 15 minutes, so it's not working out, obviously, right now, 30 minutes in.
Well, fingers are crossed. We'll see if he can make something work here, but chances are nil, guys. The army supply difference is way too big. And desRow! Oh! desRow, more like no, dude, don't do that. The BM comes in with a stock. So I'm sure he thinks it's a little bit playful, but Phog obviously not going to be too pleased with this. His army eats those storms, and this is about game 1 going in the favor of desRow. You know, it was a clean game up to that point, Zombie Grub. There was no power of Protoss. There was no underhanded tactics. There was really classy run-bys from both players. Then he had to go and dance his units.
I think desRow is probably like on board with us in his mind, saying like, "I've been winning the last 5 minutes just slowly," so it's probably pretty confident.